Imagine a country where the stock market is just constantly hitting record highs.
Right.
Like billionaires are being minted at this record speed, and the financial press is out there declaring it the next global superpower.
Yeah, the headlines are glowing.
Exactly. But then, you look a little closer for yourself and you realize the average citizen in this supposed economic miracle is taking out a 24% interest loan just to buy tomatoes for tonight's dinner.
It's a pretty massive paradox.
It really is. It's almost whiplash-inducing, and that is the reality of India's economy in the year 2026, which is what we are unpacking in today's deep dive.
Yeah, and it's a reality that completely breaks the traditional models we normally use to measure success.
Right, because we're so conditioned to just...
To look at GDP.
Yes.
It's gross domestic product.
Right. We look at that singular metric, and we just assume that if the line on the graph is going up and to the right, then prosperity is rising like a tide, lifting all boats.
But our stack of research today says otherwise. Exactly. When you actually dive into the macroeconomic reports, the ground-level consumer surveys, all these financial forecasts we have in front of us, that line graph just shatters into a million contradictory pieces.
Which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive, because our mission today is to answer one really critical question from the source material.
The big one.
Yeah. Can macroeconomic growth actually improve the lives of ordinary people, or is it, just a masterclass in looking really, really good on paper?
It's a tough question.
It is. So to help you, the listener, sort of wrap your mind around the sheer scale of this disconnect, I want to use a metaphor that was actually pulled straight from the research.
The Virat House analogy.
Right. So imagine India, not as this massive subcontinent of over 1 billion people, but as a single, sprawling, enormous family estate. And let's call it Virat House.
Okay, I like this. And as you walk up to Virat House, the first thing you notice is the perimeter, right?
Yeah, the exterior.
It is flawlessly designed. Like, the driveway is paved with these state-of-the-art multi-lane expressways.
Oh, and you look up and the airspace is just buzzing. You've got these gleaming new international airports acting as the grand gates to the property.
Exactly. And the front lawn is completely taken over by these hyperkinetic, aggressively funded tech startups.
Just everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And every single transaction happening at the front gate, whether it's the delivery guy or the landscaper, it's executed instantly via this seamless digital payment network.
So a foreign investor or a global diplomat walks past this estate, right? They take one look at that glittering exterior, and they immediately conclude that this household has just figured it all out.
They're winning the 21st century.
Right. But the thesis of our analysis today is that you cannot judge Virat House from the street.
No, you really can't.
Because the moment you step through those massive oak front doors, you're confronted with a highly complicated, deeply asymmetrical, and fiercely unequal reality.
The architectural cohesion just completely vanishes.
Right. So let's unpack this. If the outside is this tech utopia, what exactly does the inside look like?
Well, imagine walking down the main interior hallway. You glance into the first few rooms, and they are breathtaking.
Just overflowing with wealth.
Yeah, unprecedented compounding wealth. The people in these rooms are globally connected, they're technologically advanced.
And insulated.
Highly insulated from the rest of the house. But as you keep walking, you open other doors, and the air just immediately leaves your lungs.
Oh, wow.
You find rooms filled with people grappling with stagnant wages, severe structural unemployment.
Staggering levels of debt, too, according to the data.
Predatory debt, yes. And just this pervasive, creeping anxiety about their future. The external shine of that tech utopia simply hasn't penetrated the drywall of these inner spaces.
So to really understand this 2026 economy, we need to meet the actual residents of Virat House.
We need to look past the GDP.
Right. We need to examine the human cost of this specific brand of asymmetrical growth.
Definitely.
So let's start with a demographic that should theoretically be thriving in a tech-first economy. Let's talk about Ravi.
Ravi's a great example. He's an archetype drawn from the data, representing millions of young Indian engineering graduates in 2026.
So who is Ravi?
To understand him, you really have to understand the decades of immense psychological and financial weight he's carrying.
Oh, the parental pressure.
Exactly. In the Indian middle-class context, an engineering degree isn't just an educational choice. It's viewed as this ironclad insurance policy.
Right. Ravi's parents didn't just pay tuition. They engaged in Decades of severe deferred gratification.
They skipped vacations.
They delayed medical treatments. They funneled every spare rupee into private tutoring and college fees.
They essentially liquidated their present to purchase a secure future for Ravi.
Because they bought into the brochure of Bharat House. They were told, study hard, get the technical degree, and you get the key to one of those gilded rooms we talked about.
But our research shows that Ravi graduates, gets his degree, and just hits a brick wall.
He cannot find a stable, formal sector job. And I'm going to be honest, this is where my brain starts to glitch a little bit.
How so?
Well, how can we have a front yard teeming with tech startups, massive IT services firms, foreign capital pouring into digital infrastructure, and simultaneously sit on a massive structural youth unemployment crisis among engineering graduates?
It comes down to a catastrophic misalignment of gears within the economic engine.
What does that mean exactly?
There's a structural mismatch between the supply of labor and the demands of capital. The companies inside those gilded rooms, they are desperate for talent.
Right. They have open jobs.
They have tons of open requisitions.
Yeah.
But they need advanced adaptive technical skills, things like complex systems architecture, artificial intelligence deployment.
High-level data synthesis.
Exactly.
So what are the universities actually giving them?
A product from a decade ago.
Wow.
Yeah. The vast majority of the second and third tier engineering colleges, the ones that absorbed all of that immense parental sacrifice, they are still operating on highly theoretical, deeply outdated curricula.
So they're teaching rote memorization in an era that demands cognitive agility. Let me put it this way for you, the listener. It's like Ravi spent 4 years and his family's entire life savings forging this incredibly expensive, highly specialized key.
Right.
He works 18 hours a day perfecting this key. He graduates, walks up to the front door of the corporate workforce, goes to put his key in the lock, and realizes that the entire industry ripped out the old locks and installed biometric scanners 3 years ago.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
His key isn't just the wrong shape. The entire mechanism of entry has evolved past it.
And this isn't just bad luck, right? The source material says it's a systemic failure.
It's a massive failure of agility. Consider the mechanics here. Technology in 2026 is iterating in cycles of months, sometimes weeks.
Right. A new generative AI protocol can just upend a coding language standard overnight.
But academia moves at a glacial pace.
Because to update a curriculum at a major university, you have to draft a new syllabus, pass it through multiple bureaucratic academic councils, secure government approvals.
You have to retrain professors who have been teaching the exact same notes for 20 years.
And print new textbooks.
Right. By the time that entire 5-year process is complete, the corporate sector has already moved on to the next paradigm.
Which traps Ravi in the leg. He did everything right. He played entirely by the rules his society laid out for him. And his reward is a piece of paper the market actively rejects.
It's devastating. We're looking at a generation dealing with a profound sense of betrayal.
And the macroeconomic data just coldly labels this a quote-unquote youth unemployment problem.
But when you look at the mechanics, it's actually a crisis of educational illusion.
Educational illusion, yeah.
And think about the social volatility this breeds. You have tens of millions of highly energized, digitally native young people who are basically locked out of their own country's economic miracle.
They can literally look at their smartphones and watch the stock portfolios of tech founders multiply.
While they're forced to take gig economy jobs, delivering food or driving cabs just to cover the interest payments on their student loans.
That is a massive pool of untapped demographic potential slowly curdling into frustration.
It's a powder keg.
Okay, but let's pressure test this a bit. Because humans are resilient, they adapt. If the corporate doors are locked and Ravi can't get a job at a big tech firm, well, if you can't find a job in the formal sector, you create one.
Right, you fall back on the traditional engine of any developing economy.
Main Street. You start a small business or you go work for a local one. But as we dig into the second layer of Bharat House, we find that this escape hatch is also welded shut.
Yeah. Let's talk about Sita.
Right. So Sita represents the traditional Main Street.
She owns a small, independent clothing shop in a bustling Tier 2 city.
And Sita's daily reality is in violent conflict with the broadcast playing on the television mounted right behind her cash register.
Oh, the news anchors are so excited.
They're thrilled. They're excitedly reporting on GDP growth, massive foreign direct investment figures, the booming national economy.
But Sita looks down at her ledger, And she sees foot traffic dropping by 15% year over year.
She sees her inventory sitting on the racks longer.
She is watching her profit margins disintegrate in real time.
This is where we see the concept of asymmetrical growth in its rawest form.
Right. The rising tide isn't lifting all boats.
It's creating a tsunami that is actively swamping the smaller vessels.
That's exactly it.
So let's break down the mechanics of that tsunami for the listener. Why is survival suddenly so difficult for a straightforward traditional business like a local clothing shop? I mean, people still need clothes.
They do. But it's a compounding squeeze from three distinct directions. First, we have to look at the very digital revolution that makes Firehouse look so modern from the outside. The aggressive penetration of e-commerce and ultra-fast delivery algorithms is just cannibalizing local retail.
Right, because if I'm a consumer, why would I walk down the street to Sita's shop, deal with limited inventory, and pay her markup?
When an app on your phone uses an algorithm to predict exactly what you want,
Sources it directly from a mega factory at scale,
and drops it at your door for 30% less.
the convenience and pricing power of digital monopolies are mathematically undefeated by local retail.
Unfair fight. Sita buys from a local wholesaler who bought from a regional distributor who bought from a manufacturer. She has to price her clothes to cover that entire chain.
Well, the app just buys 10 million units directly from the factory line. So that's the first squeeze. Digital monopolies. What's the second?
Rising fixed costs of simply existing.
Inflation.
Well, specifically real estate prices. In India, they've surged, meaning Sita's commercial rent is escalating rapidly. Energy costs to keep the lights and the AC on are rising.
Oh, and the compliance costs.
Yes. The compliance costs of navigating modern tax structures, like the GST, the goods and services tax.
Right. The text mentions she often has to hire an accountant just to handle the paperwork.
Whereas massive corporations have entire departments dedicated to optimizing and minimizing their tax burdens. Her baseline for survival just keeps moving higher.
And then there's the third squeeze, which I think is honestly the most devastating. Shrinking consumer demand. Sita's customers, the local middle class, they simply have less disposable income to spend on discretionary items like a new dress or a new shirt.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, this is where the entire ecosystem starts to eat its own tail.
How so?
Well, small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, are globally recognized as the absolute backbone of job creation. They are the shock absorbers of an economy.
Right. When a massive corporation lays people off, SMEs usually absorb that labor.
Exactly.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. This is the domino effect in action. If Sita's business is being crushed by digital monopolies, choked by rising rent, and starved of customers, she cannot expand.
She might even have to downsize.
And if she can't expand, who does she not hire?
She's going to hire Robbie.
Right. Robbie needs a job to pay off his useless engineering degree. In a healthy economy, maybe he takes a job managing Sita's inventory or running a localized digital marketing campaign for her shop.
Or managing her accounts. But Sita can't afford him.
So we enter this vicious macroeconomic cycle.
The youth can't get corporate jobs because of the skills mismatch, so they rely on small businesses.
But small businesses are suffocating due to asymmetrical digital competition and low consumer spending.
And because Ravi doesn't have a job, he isn't spending money at Sita's shop.
Which means Sita's revenue drops further, which guarantees she will never hire Ravi.
It is a closed loop of stagnation. It explains perfectly how you can have GDP growth without job growth.
Because the capital is aggregating at the very top.
Exactly. The large online platforms that are putting Sita out of business, the venture capitalists and institutional investors behind those platforms are seeing massive returns.
Their stock valuations are skyrocketing. That is the wealth the GDP captures.
But that capital is trapped in the financial stratosphere. It never trickles down to Main Street.
It's an economy of massive scale, but terrible distribution. You essentially have two completely different economies occupying the exact same geographic space.
That's a great way to put it.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because this raises a massive red flag for me.
Go for it.
If consumer spending is shrinking, if incomes are stagnant, if Ravi is unemployed, and Sita is losing money, look out the window.
I know where you're going with this.
Go to a Tier 1 or Tier 2 Indian city in 2026. The malls are crowded. Traffic is bumper to bumper with brand new SUVs.
People are walking around with $1,000 smartphones.
Flights to tourist destinations are booked solid. So if wages aren't paying for this lifestyle, what is?
Yeah.
How is the facade of a Parat house being maintained if the residents are broke?
That is genuinely the most dangerous question in modern economics.
Really?
Yeah. When the visual evidence of wealth completely divorces from the mathematical reality of income, you are looking at a system built entirely on leverage.
Leverage, meaning debt.
You are looking at the explosion of the EMI economy.
EMI, equated monthly installment. The illusion of wealth. Let's dig really deep into this because I think this is the core pathology of the 2026 landscape.
It absolutely is. And to grasp the severity of this shift, you have to understand the historical bedrock of the Indian middle class.
Right. Historically, they were savers?
Yes, for generations, this was an inherently conservative, savings-driven culture. The psychological default was to hoard capital.
You saved aggressively for medical emergencies.
For your children's education, for weddings, for retirement, savings weren't just a financial instrument. They were a moral imperative.
That's a point of pride, right?
Exactly. And practically, it provided a massive decentralized buffer against economic shocks. If the economy faltered, the Indian consumer retreated into their savings and weathered the storm.
But the data we are looking at says that cultural bedrock has completely fractured.
Household savings rates have plummeted. People are saving less and spending exponentially more.
But why? I mean, my initial reaction is to blame social media. Did an entire culture just suddenly become financially reckless? Did everyone decide they needed to go into debt to buy designer sneakers to post on Instagram?
It's so tempting to blame it on consumer frivolity, but the data does not support that narrative at all. It's a much darker reality. The primary driver of the collapse in savings isn't the desire for luxury. It's the skyrocketing, unmanageable cost of unavoidable necessities.
Oh.
We are talking about the hyperinflation of the baseline requirements for modern survival.
Unpack that. What baselines?
Well, let's start with healthcare. Public healthcare infrastructure in many areas is overburdened, which pushes the middle class into the private healthcare system.
And medical inflation consistently outpaces general inflation.
Exactly. A single-family medical emergency, a surgery, a severe illness, can now instantly vaporize a decade of accumulated savings.
And education. We just talked about Ravi. His parents didn't buy a yacht. They bought an engineering degree.
Yes. The privatization and premiumization of education means that just getting your child to the starting line of the modern economy requires a staggering capital outlay.
Add to that the exponential rise in urban real estate and rent. Families aren't choosing to save less because they are partying.
No, they are forced to save less because the basic cost of keeping a roof over their heads, staying healthy, and educating their children has violently outpaced their wage growth.
So their savings are depleted just trying to maintain the status quo. But the bills keep coming. And the social pressure to maintain the appearance of middle-class stability doesn't just vanish.
Right.
So what fills the gap between a stagnant paycheck and a rising cost of living?
Debt. Readily available, aggressively marketed, highly digitized debt.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit. Access to credit is traditionally viewed as a sign of a maturing economy, right?
Originally.
If you look at the United States in the 20th century, the entire middle class was built on access to 30-year mortgages and auto loans. It allowed people to build equity and participate in the economy.
Right.
So why is it suddenly a mirage or a bad thing when the Indian consumer gets access to credit?
That is a phenomenal distinction to make, and it cuts to the absolute heart of the crisis. There is a massive difference between asset-building debt and consumption debt.
Okay, explain that.
When the U.S. middle class leveraged debt for a mortgage, they were buying a housing asset that, historically, appreciated in value over time and built generational wealth.
They were investing.
Exactly. But what the 2026 Indian data shows is a